Do you want to know what it takes to write a musical theme worthy of Middle-earth? If so, then stick around because in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into Misty Mountains from the iconic film The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Let's get into the video.
Far over the misty mountains call to dungeons deep and caverns old. We must away ere break of day to find our long forgotten gold.
Hey everyone, it's Rex from the Maze Music Academy, where we put out instructional videos on music theory, composition, and digital audio production to help musicians just like you level up your music making. Misty Mountains is easily the most recognizable theme from Peter Jackson's Hobbit film trilogy. And although the scores for those films were written by Howard Shore, the actual song, Misty Mountains, was composed by Wellington-based band Plan 9 and David Long. Now, die-hard Tolkien fans know that in the book, the song was originally titled Far Over the Misty Mountains Cold, and it was much, much longer in the book. In the film, we only get 2 stanzas. In the book, it was well over a dozen stanzas. And the song actually tells the story of the dwarves of Erebor and how they lost their home and their treasure to the dragon Smaug. And that's important to know because when we start looking into the music, you really get a sense of this loss and that austere nature of the story and how the music enhances that. Don't believe me? Just take a look. So now we're going to go in and we're going to dissect Misty Mountains, analyze what's going on in the music so that we can learn how we can write themes that can enhance a story like this. And what we're going to use is the 5 essential elements of music, which is represented by the acronym SMRF, which stands for sound, harmony, melody, rhythm, and form. And I have a whole video series all about SMRF that you can check that out. You can click the card above or click on the link in the description below to go check that out. So let's start with the sound. So the first thing you probably noticed is that this theme is entirely sung. There's no instrumental accompaniment at all. And sort of the slow trudging style of it gives it this sort of Gregorian chant-like style, which is from the Middle Ages. And when we hear that, we automatically get this feeling that the music has this age and this history to it, giving this kind of ancient feeling, which is perfect for the dwarves who have this long history in the book. And on top of that, in the movies, the actors actually sing in this very low male register, just the D below the bass clef. And when you hear that depth, it really caters well to the dwarves as characters, because when you think of dwarves, especially in Tolkien, they're these stoic characters that live deep underground in the mines and in the underneath the mountains and things like that. And so when you hear them sing in that low register kind of chant-like flavor, especially together, it really creates this depth to their character that is fitting of the dwarves in the story. Now that's all there really is to say about the sound. That piece of it's pretty simple. Now the harmony is a little bit more complex and there's a lot of interesting things going on here. So the first thing is that it looks like the piece is just written in a normal G minor at first glance. You look at the key signature, it's normal G minor. You look at the start of the piece, you got a nice G minor triad there. But then right away you go to a D minor chord, which if it was in G minor, we would actually expect a D major chord as the dominant, which would give it that kind of brighter, dominant flavor. But we actually have that minor D instead, and then that undulation between the tonic minor with the dominant minor really gives it that kind of darker kind of tone, and it really kind of sets the stage for this sorrow and this loss and this longing that the dwarves are singing about. So now as we go back and forth between the G minor and the D minor, it's kind of unclear, what key we're really in. It kind of sounds like a natural minor or an Aeolian mode, but then we get this interesting A minor chord, which does not fit into your normal G minor key. And that's because the E in A minor and E natural is actually normally an E flat in the key of G. So what that means is that this piece is actually in G Dorian because it's the same as natural minor, except for the 6th scale degree is raised up by a half step. And so I'm going to actually do an entire video just on the Dorian mode and how it's used because it's a really cool mode and there's a lot of things that make it really interesting. So you can check that out in the description below. So that A minor is actually really interesting, even in the context of Dorian mode, because most pieces that are in Dorian, they like to highlight that E natural, that 6th scale degree, in the major 4 chord. So you get this sound that's kind of like the G minor to a C major chord. And you get that kind of brightness, and that really sets Dorian apart from your normal minor keys. It has that bright 4 chord, but we're not using that. We're using this minor chord on the 2. And again, that going from G minor to D minor to A minor, that trifecta of minor chords just really sets the tone of what these dwarves are thinking and feeling right now. So now it's interesting if you start to look at how the lyrics line up with the harmony as well. And the lyrics here, the D minor starts it, we must away ere break of day, landing on the A minor. And again, that minor to minor chord progression, in the lyrics, we must away ere, before the break of day. The lyrics suggest that we're going on a mission, but those 2 minor chords kind of set this sort of, uncertainty to it. It makes you think that maybe they're not prepared, or maybe there isn't a good, maybe there's kind of a foreboding peril there that's being hinted at in the music. So all this use of the elements of music with the harmonies and the melodies and the rhythms to enhance the lyrics is what's called text painting. And I'm going to have another video that's going to be specifically about that you can check out in the description below. So moving from the A minor, which again is the triad built on the supertonic, which is the 2nd scale degree, the next chord is actually a B flat major triad, which is the mediant chord built on the 3rd scale degree, and it's major. So it's got this bright, it's the first major chord that we hear. It's one of the only major chords that we actually hear in the whole piece. So when we go up a half step from A minor up to that B flat major, it has this sort of, it's like a gleam of bright light. And it's really striking in that context. It kind of makes you visualize that hoard stockpile of gold like you see in the movies in the Lonely Mountain. And now moving from that, we go from A minor up to that bright B flat major where they're talking about their long forgotten gold. And then when they hit the word gold, it goes back down to the tonic triad, which is the G minor. And again, we go from A minor up to B flat major. We think we're ascending. Things are getting kind of better. Maybe we're going to see a little bit of positive light here. And then it just goes right back down to the minor and darkens it back up again. And in the story, this is very prevalent, even more so in the movies than even in the book, where it really foreshadows the kind of corruptive nature of the gold on particularly the character of Thorin, but how that gold kind of causes all this conflict and this greed that's not good. So now when we move into the 2nd stanza, we basically follow the same pattern of the harmony. They sneak in from the G minor and they substitute the D minor for an F major chord that's suspended, which gives it a little bit of a lift, having that major chord instead of the D minor. And it just kind of gets it rolling, gives it a little bit more momentum at that part. They're talking about the attack of the dragon on the mountain, so it's a little bit more exciting lyrics at that point. And then it goes back and forth a lot more between the D minor, and it has an extra instance of that A minor, just to really emphasize that Dorian flavor. And then the phrase ends with the same chord progression as the 1st stanza, which again starts with the D minor to A minor, lifted up to the B flat major, and then back down to that G minor. And that's a very weak cadence to the harmonic progression. It does not have a lot of certainty to it, which again, it alludes to the uncertain nature of this journey. You have this small group of dwarves and Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbit, going on this journey that seems way bigger than what they can handle. So it kind of foreshadows that the journey is fraught with peril, and that there's probably going to be some scary bad stuff that's going to happen, which is exactly what does happen in the story. Now, I know I'm throwing a lot of technical jargon at you related to this harmony stuff, but don't get intimidated. I'm going to make tons more videos that are going to be related to these specific harmonies and progressions and different modes and all this kind of stuff that you can check out later. I'll put all those links in the description below. So that's what's going on in the harmony in the piece. Now, the melody kind of rides that same wave in the Dorian mode, and Dorian mode itself alludes to chant music because that mode goes back to Gregorian chant and that kind of thing. So it helps enhance that sort of history and that ancientness in the tune. Now, the melody, far over the misty mountains call, in dungeons deep and caverns old. You can kind of hear as I trace it with my hand there that we're kind of outlining almost like the contour of a mountain range, which is perfect for the dwarves who actually come from a mountain. So that's kind of a cool little trick there with the actual melodic line. Now, one of the other cool little details about the melody is how it actually starts in that low D2 and then rises up. And that kind of alludes to the lore behind the dwarves in the Middle Earth universe, sort of how they were born in these deep caverns beneath these primordial mountains. It's just a really cool little detail there with the sort of fantasy world there. Now, again, it doesn't go very high. It goes up to that D, an octave above on We Must Away, which kind of alludes to their lofty goals of going back and taking back their kingdom at the Lonely Mountain. But then it just descends back down and lands back on that G minor chord. So again, kind of foreshadows that peril and that challenge that's coming up. Now, the last interesting thing about the melody is how it actually ends. And both stanzas end with the same kind of, again, that weak cadence in the harmony. And the melody is kind of a weak ending as well. It goes from that A minor, raises up to that B flat major chord, and then it just sort of kind of drifts around and lands back on the G minor. And that there's no sweeping ups or downs, it just kind of rolls around. Again, it just alludes to that uncertainty in their journey. So that's what's going on with the melody. Now, rhythmically, the piece also is very chant-like. It has these elongated, kind of drudging tones as it moves up and down stepwise, which is very much like Gregorian chant. It doesn't give you any real allusion to the meter or the beat. It's not very strong. So you're just kind of floating, and it kind of alludes to that sort of uncertainty there, that darkness that is in the lyrics. And now beneath the surface, you have these really long open fifths and fourths, perfect intervals, which again really alludes to medieval music and kind of just makes the whole piece this kind of elongated. And again, with the dwarf kind of character in the books, kind of gives it that stoic kind of character. So even though the rhythm is pretty simple throughout the entire piece, there's one very tiny, minuscule detail at the very, very end that's really, really interesting if you pick up on it. And what that is that the entire piece is in common time, 4/4, 4 beats per measure, except for the second to last measure, which is in 2/4, which is half the length of a 4/4 bar. Now, what that does is it means we get to that last final note 2 beats too early. So we kind of stumble into it. And again, it creates that kind of wavering, uncertain kind of feeling, just like the harmony and the melody, and just highlights it that much further. So, we've been working on, singing through this in 4 beats at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, which has kind of a solid character there. But as soon as we turn that B flat chord into 2 beats, it seems a little bit, it seems like you're stumbling. So if we count it again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, that coming in that 2 beats early, it's a very, very tiny detail, but it's just another way that the composers were able to highlight that uncertainty of this journey that these dwarves are about to go on. So there's the rhythm. Now, the final element we're going to look at is the form, which in the actual piece, Misty Mountains, is extremely simple. It just follows the pattern of the poem underneath, basically the lyrics. Now, what's interesting about the form, if you look at the entire movie series, is that Howard Shore takes the song and little tidbits of it, and he pulls it apart and grabs the main elements of it and uses it in all kinds of different ways. He orchestrates it differently. When the dwarves are succeeding and they're victorious, you hear lots of brass instruments and it's much bigger and more orchestral. And then when things get a little darker, a little more perilous, it starts to get quieter and darker and a little bit more uncertain. And he sneaks in some dissonances in there to kind of give some edge to it. So when you watch the movies, that's where the form becomes interesting, because you can start to hear this Misty Mountains theme as the main theme for the dwarves throughout the entire movie series. So I blasted through that really, really fast. So I highly encourage you to go back and listen to the piece a few times just to get it in your ear. Maybe go back and watch the video again and just kind of pick up on some of those little details that we pointed out. But really the next step is now, how can you start to use these kind of techniques in your own music? So I encourage you to find a fantasy story that you like, maybe historical fiction with kings and court and all that kind of stuff, something kind of fantasy themed, and just maybe try to come up with a little theme that incorporates some of the story elements, whether it's a happier, more joyful story or a sad, darker story. You can use brighter or darker kinds of harmonies. The direction of your melody going up and down can kind of highlight that, and the little details of the rhythm can create more stability or more uncertainty depending on how you lay it out. So that's the best way to practice it. And then, the Misty Mountains, I love this piece so much. It's a great example of all these different techniques. So just keep listening and keep looking for these kind of techniques in other movies and other themes, and then start to apply it to your own music. So the question that I have for you is, what are some other pieces, maybe from movies or video games, that you'd like me to analyze in a video to kind of figure out how it works, and so maybe you can learn how to use those techniques in your own music? Tell me all about it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I hope you got some good value out of this video. If so, I'd appreciate it if you smash that like button and consider subscribing and hitting the little bell icon so you get notified when I release new content just like this. So before I go, I have one last tidbit for you true Tolkien lore masters out there. So as we just discussed, the Misty Mountains song in the movie is only sung. There's no instrumental accompaniment at all. But if you recall from The Hobbit, the book, every single dwarf comes equipped with an instrument that they play while they sing the song. And the actual instruments that they put together is almost like a small chamber ensemble, reminiscent of a Renaissance or a late medieval style small ensemble. And it includes fiddles, viols, which are the predecessor to the modern cello, flutes, clarinets, a drum, and a harp. So all the dwarves actually accompany their song when they sing it in the books. So I'm going to leave you with my humble interpretation of what that accompaniment might have sounded like with the music from the movie. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep